All right, how's it going there, Jackson? Hope you're doing well. This is basically where we left off last week. We ended up with a single surface on the model there. I'm just going to turn off this, and so we have one single surface. We're going to be using this object browser today quite a bit, so I'm just going to review functionality of this. So when you've got this, when you've got the part over here highlighted in gray, that's the part that's going to be edited at the time. So if I click my select tool, I can only select on the part that's highlighted, and then we can toggle on and off the eyeball for the other parts. You can actually toggle off the active one too if you want. So we're going to add some parts to this today. In the first one, we're going to actually duplicate this surface. And we're going to use it later as a cut surface. But we're going to, just for now, we're just going to duplicate it and hide it. And then we'll use it later. And I'll explain that later because it's just easier to explain it while we're doing it. So the other thing we're going to do right now is we're going to potentially change units. So I had you draw a CAD model frame for the filter piece. Yours might be a square, it might be a circle, depends. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the units that you use to draw this in. For me, this is drawn in inches. So we're going to change the Meshmixer file into inches, change the units there. So currently this is in millimeters. But if we go over to here and we go to units and dimensions, so we go to analysis, units and dimensions, we get the bounding box around our model, and then we're going to change it. You can select any one of those boxes, click inches, and we're going to say convert. So now our model should roughly be these dimensions. So for the human head, like 17 by 14, something like that. And we'll say done. And then before we actually bring in our frame, we're just going to duplicate this part real quick. So we'll say select, Control A, and that'll select the whole thing. And then we'll go to Edit, Offset, and a good offset is going to be about 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125. We can scroll around and just kind of see what that looks like. It's about 1/8 of an inch. Say accept. And clear selection. Actually, I'm going to duplicate. Before I offset, I need to duplicate back. Sorry about that. I need to duplicate that before I offset it. So we're going to be right here. We'll just click duplicate. And then we're just going to rename it. So if you double click in the box, I'm just going to call this mask cut. And then we'll go back and we'll offset this. So I'm going to leave this by itself, and I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn off the visibility, and I'm going to make it inactive. And now I'll go back and offset this. Luckily, we have Control Z, and Control Z will just undo back quite a few steps. So now we're going to select, Control A, select the whole thing, edit, we'll say offset, and let's try this again. Okay, 0.125, say accept, and we're good. All right, I'm going to turn this off for now. All right, so then we've got a duplicate surface, we've got the offset, mask. We've changed units. So now we're in inches. And now we can go ahead and bring in your frame. So we'll say append because what we're going to do is we're going to combine these two meshes eventually. Replace would basically delete that and just bring in your other part, but we're going to say append. And then you can go ahead and navigate to where your frame is. And what I did is I saved mine as an OBJ file. So in SolidWorks or Fusion 360 or whatever you used, you can export out of there as an OBJ. So go ahead and do that. And then we'll say open. I'm going to say no to this one. And then you'll see your frame is over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our filter frame active. That's going to be the active one right now. We'll leave the mask not active but visible. And then we're going to go ahead and transform this part. So we're going to bring it and reposition where that is exactly. So when you transform it, this enable snapping is on. Let's go ahead and turn enable snapping off, and then it won't be snapping to the grid anymore. So I like to use the view cube for this because you can get really accurate movements. So I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to go ahead and type in exactly 90 degrees over here. 0. And then I'll go to the front view. Actually, yeah, let's stay on the top view for a minute. Move this up and then over. We're going to actually rotate it so it's somewhat coincident with that surface. Let's say accept for now. I'm going to go ahead and do the recenter the view so that we can get in a little bit closer. Okay. So now we're going to transform again and get this a little bit more centered now that we're in a little bit closer. So basically we want this obviously centered on the front. And then the thing we also want to be able to do is bring that frame all the way through the mask. Let's see how it's gone too far at this point. So make sure it's all the way through, which looks pretty good. Might have to adjust that a little bit later, but I think it's okay for now. All right, so then we'll accept that, and that looks good. We're going to turn the mask off for now, and I'm going to have you hit the W key on your keyboard, and what you can see is that this part really doesn't have many triangles. There's just 2 triangles for that whole top piece. And what we need to do is increase that number of triangles. It's going to get, as we blend these 2 together, it's really hard, and I talked to you about this before, it's really hard to blend big triangles smoothly. It gets really jagged and really, it gets to be a total mess, basically. So we're going to remesh this part. So we're going to basically make a whole bunch more triangles in here. So go ahead and select Control A, select the whole thing, and then we'll say Edit and Remesh. And we want to make sure that linear subdivision is selected. Linear subdivision just divides every existing triangle into more triangles, whereas if you did relative density, it would just try and increase the number, but would alter the original triangle. So we don't want that. We want linear subdivision, and then we can just increase like that, and we'll say accept. And then we can do it again, and I'm going to actually increase it a little bit more even. So we'll go right about there. And it's not anything, it's not like CAD, it's not like super scientific or super precise. Meshes are a little bit by eye, as if you've noticed already. So roughly this number of triangles. We'll say accept. Okay, so now we've got a decent number of triangles on our cube, so that we can start meshing into the mask. Let's turn the mask on again, and you can see what's ideal is if you have roughly a similar number of triangles on the two things you're trying to mesh together. So ultimately, we're going to mesh these two and join them. And if they're really different numbers of triangles on each of those, it doesn't go very well. So we just want to get the numbers up on each, actually just on the frame in this instance. So that's looking pretty decent. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we're actually going to duplicate this filter frame as well. And that'll make more sense in just a minute. So let's say duplicate, and I'm going to call this, double click in there, let's say filter final. And I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to make that one active, the filter frame. Okay. So, all right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select the filter frame, and we're going to select the mask. So we're going to actually use the first filter frame to cut through the mask and separate that mask. And so we're going to, in the process, we're going to end up deleting that filter frame because we're going to use it as a cutting tool. And in the process of using it as a cutting tool, the cutting tool will get deleted. That's why we created a second copy. And we did that. We waited until, I waited until we positioned this where we wanted it. We did all the modifications. Then we copied it because we want all the same, we want the same positioning, same number of triangles for that final, copy, basically. So we're going to say, we're going to do a Boolean join, or Boolean difference rather. And so when you select these, I'm going to control select. So I'm going to press and hold control. I'm going to select my filter frame second. Actually, I'm going to select this first, control, and I'm going to select the filter frame. So in the order that you select these is important. So the first thing you select is going to stay. It's going to remain, and it's going to be cut. The second thing you select is going to be the tool for cutting, and it's going to get deleted. So we're going to say Boolean difference. And in doing so, you see that our filter frame was deleted, and it goes away. But the mask is still there. That's what we want. So select the thing you want to keep first. Control select the thing you want to use to cut second. We'll say accept. And then what we'll do is we'll do our select tool. and we're going to delete this middle part. And that brush is really big. Okay, so that's selected. We'll say delete. Then we're going to go to the side, delete that. And do a very good job selecting. If you triple click it, it should just delete. And then if we zoom in really close, you're going to want to get the outside edge, which is there we go. Delete. Now it goes away. Okay. Now, when we turn the filter final on, it's in position where it should be, except that it's going back into our mask. So that's where this surface here is going to come in handy. So now we created that copy earlier, and we called it mask cut. We're going to go ahead and cut that. Let's see. That's not a single surface. That's a double surface right there. Okay, let's see how this is going to work. Okay. So we'll go mask cut. So we want to keep this one. So the filter final, control select mask cut, and it's a Boolean difference. All right. And then when we turn these back on, we end up with a nice smooth surface on the inside. Okay, that worked. Sweet. All right, so those are the steps. We're going to pause there for today. And ultimately, you'll end up with something that looks like this. All right, cool. Let me know if I can help. And yeah, we'll keep working through this.